The chandeliers shimmered like captured constellations above the ballroom, scattering golden light across marble floors and the polished faces of the city's elite. A string quartet played softly in the corner, their music barely rising over the laughter and clinking of glasses. Everything gleamed: crystal, silver, silk. Sophia adjusted the delicate strap of her emerald gown and forced a polite smile as she entered the grand dining hall beside her husband, Ethan. He looked effortlessly commanding in his tuxedo, the picture of charm and success. The evening was meant to celebrate the expansion of Alara Luxe, the luxury brand they had built together from nothing. An empire of fashion, fragrance, and prestige. "Ah, here's the lady of the hour," one of the investors greeted, shaking Ethan's hand before turning to Sophia. "And the beautiful inspiration behind the empire." Ethan laughed, his hand tightening subtly around Sophia's waist. "Oh, she's more than inspiration," he said, his tone dripping with charm. "She makes sure the office looks good. Keeps the flowers alive, right, honey?" The table erupted in laughter. Sophia's lips curved in what looked like amusement, but her fingers clenched around her clutch under the table. She wanted to remind them that she designed the brand's first line, negotiated the first supplier deals, and coded the company's original website when they couldn't afford a team. But she stayed silent. It wasn't the first time Ethan had done this. Over the past year, as the company grew and their wealth ballooned, he had grown bolder with his jokes. To him, they were harmless. To her, they were small, public cuts, slicing into the respect she'd earned. When the maître d' announced dinner, the guests moved to their seats. Sophia sat beside Ethan, across from a row of investors and executives, the air thick with chatter and perfume. Ethan raised his glass for a toast. "To success," he began, voice smooth and confident, "and to everyone who believed in Alara Luxe from the start. You've seen what we've built. But trust me, this is only the beginning." He paused, smiling at the crowd. "And of course to my wife, Sophia, who's been by my side through it all. She may not know a profit margin from a perfume formula, but she sure knows how to make our brand sparkle." Another round of laughter. Sophia's heart sank. She watched faces she'd once worked late nights with, people she'd inspired, laugh at her like she was a trophy on a shelf. Ethan winked at her playfully, as though expecting gratitude for including her at all. She smiled again. It was practiced, perfect, and entirely hollow. The waiter refilled glasses. The conversations shifted to market projections and overseas expansion. Sophia listened quietly, noting how every idea she had once proposed, the influencer campaign, the sustainable packaging, the new fragrance division, was now being discussed as if it were Ethan's brilliance alone. When she finally spoke, her voice was calm but deliberate. "Actually," she said softly, "the expansion in Milan was finalized last week. I signed the agreement myself." The table went silent for a second. Ethan's hand froze on his fork. "Oh, really?" he said, laughing lightly, though his jaw tightened. "That's cute, darling. She loves to be involved." "Of course I do," Sophia said, her eyes steady. "After all, I did write the Milan contract myself, back when you were still in meetings with the investors." The subtle jab hung in the air, sharp, elegant. But Ethan's pride wouldn't let it stand. He turned to the table, grinning. "She's right. She's been very helpful with the paperwork. My assistant says she could have had a great career in admin." The laughter this time was louder. Sophia felt the sting rise in her throat, but she swallowed it. She folded her napkin carefully, her movements precise and composed, even as her heart pounded. The rest of the dinner blurred into clinking cutlery and echoes of mockery. When dessert was served, Ethan leaned closer. "Don't take things so seriously, Soph," he whispered. "You know I'm just teasing." She looked at him then. Really looked. The man who once stayed up all night building prototypes with her, who once called her his equal, now smiled at her like a possession. Her silence wasn't submission. It was calculation. She realized that he had grown so confident, so comfortable in his arrogance, that he had forgotten something crucial. He thought of her as his wife, not his partner. He thought she was lucky to have him. He thought Alara Lux was his company. He'd forgotten who signed the majority of the shares when they incorporated. When the dinner ended, Ethan basked in congratulations, shaking hands and posing for photos. Sophia lingered near the exit, her expression unreadable under the golden lights. As the car pulled up outside, she looked back through the glass doors at the glittering scene she'd once helped create. Inside, Ethan laughed with a group of investors, unaware that the woman standing in the shadows beside the car was silently reevaluating everything. Her role, her marriage, her silence. By the time he joined her and the car door shut, the night had already changed something inside her. She no longer felt humiliated. She felt awake. The drive home was silent. But in that silence, a plan began to form. A quiet, powerful reckoning waiting to unfold. The night outside was drenched in silver moonlight, the city's skyline glimmering like a line of diamonds against the darkness. Inside the sleek black car, silence stretched like glass, fragile and dangerous. Ethan tapped on his phone, scrolling through messages from board members congratulating him on the successful dinner. The faint buzz of notifications filled the air, punctuated by his occasional smug chuckle. Sophia stared out of the tinted window, her reflection faint against the lights. She could still hear the laughter, the investors, the executives, the women at the table whispering after Ethan's joke. The humiliation clung to her skin like invisible ash. Ethan finally looked up. "You were quiet tonight," he said casually, still half distracted. "I had nothing to add," she replied, voice calm, almost detached. He smirked. "You didn't need to. Sometimes it's better to let the professionals talk." Her fingers tightened slightly against her lap, but her tone remained even. "The professionals?" He glanced at her, oblivious to the warning edge in her tone. "You know what I mean. Investors like confidence. You get emotional, people sense it. It's not good for the image. We have to project unity, she repeated softly. "By erasing one half of it?" He sighed as though speaking to a stubborn child. "Soph, come on. You know how business works. It's not personal. You don't need to make everything about feelings." She turned her head toward him then, eyes steady, expression unreadable. "You humiliated me in front of 30 people, Ethan." He gave a little laugh. "Oh, don't exaggerate. Everyone was having fun. You're too sensitive." "You always have been." Sophia looked back out the window. The city lights passed in streaks of gold and white. His words echoed in her head, mingling with years of tiny moments. All the times he'd interrupted her mid-sentence. The patronizing compliments, the subtle digs disguised as humor. He thought she was fragile. He thought she'd always stay silent. When they reached home, the mansion loomed ahead, grand, immaculate, and empty. The kind of place people admired from a distance but never felt warmth inside. Sophia stepped out first, her heels clicking against the driveway like quiet declarations. Inside, the scent of roses filled the entryway, the arrangements she'd ordered herself that morning. Ethan tossed his jacket on the sofa, pouring himself a drink. "You should try to relax," he said lightly, swirling the amber liquid in his glass. "You're wound too tight. Everyone adores you. They see me as the face of things." "That's natural." Sophia's gaze drifted to the grand piano by the window, the one they bought when they first made their first million. Back then, they used to sit there after long workdays, planning the next move, dreaming together. But those days had long vanished under layers of ego and entitlement. "Do you remember?" she asked quietly. "The night we launched Alara Lux?" He looked at her surprised. "Of course I do. Best night of our lives." "You told me back then," she continued, voice calm but trembling slightly, "that you couldn't have done it without me. You said we were equal partners." He smiled faintly, nostalgic. "And I meant it. But things evolve, Soph. People change. You've pulled back from the business." Her brows lifted slightly. "Pulled back? You mean the moment I stopped cleaning up your messes?" His smile faded. "Watch your tone." Sophia's laughter came, soft, low, dangerous. "My tone? she said, stepping closer. You stood there tonight, mocking me in front of everyone, and now you're telling me to watch my tone. Ethan exhaled sharply. You're overreacting again. You're making something out of nothing. She stared at him for a long, cold moment. Then, without another word, she turned and walked down the hall. Her heels echoed against the marble floor, sharp, deliberate, final. In their shared study, the walls were lined with awards, photos, and framed certificates. Her eyes landed on the one that started it all. Certificate of Incorporation, Elara Lux Group. 2 names printed in elegant black ink. Ethan Calloway, 44%. Sophia Calloway, 56%. She traced her name with a fingertip. The gold frame gleaming under the soft light. Every signature, every line of ink, reminded her of the truth she'd ignored for too long, that she didn't need him to define her worth. He was the face. But she was the foundation. Sophia sat at the desk and opened her laptop. The company portal lit up. As she scrolled through the corporate structure and internal communications, she saw how far Ethan's arrogance had seeped into the culture. His jokes, his favoritism, his dismissive tone replicated by others. A quiet determination took root. Tomorrow, she thought, things will begin to change. Ethan called from the living room, his tone playful again. You're not still mad, are you? Come on, Soph, let's just forget it. But Sophia didn't answer. She typed a single line into her planner, eyes steady on the screen. Schedule board meeting. Internal conduct and restructuring discussion. The date. Tomorrow. 9 p.m. The sender, Sophia Calloway, co-founder and majority shareholder. As she shut the laptop, she felt no rage, only clarity. Ethan's laughter still echoed faintly from the other room, but it no longer reached her. Tonight, the woman he had silenced found her voice again. And by tomorrow morning, the world, and Ethan, would finally hear it. Morning arrived with deceptive calm. The sunlight poured through the sheer curtains of the Calloway estate, bathing the room in soft gold. The city was already awake, phones buzzing, emails firing, engines roaring, but inside their bedroom, the silence between Sophia and Ethan was heavier than any noise. Ethan stirred first, yawning, oblivious to the quiet storm that had been brewing right beside him. He glanced at his phone and noticed a calendar notification he didn't remember scheduling. Board meeting, internal conduct and restructuring discussion, called by Sophia Calloway. He frowned, confused. You called a board meeting? Still seated at her vanity, Sophia applied her lipstick with a steady hand. Yes, she said simply, her voice calm. What for? You'll see. Her tone carried a weight that unsettled him. But Ethan brushed it off with his usual arrogance. You know you should have checked with me first. I handle the board meetings. Sophia met his eyes in the mirror. Not today. He stared at her reflection, trying to read the new quiet confidence in her posture. But before he could respond, she stood, picked up her bag, and walked past him, a faint trace of her perfume lingering behind, like a whisper of defiance. The boardroom at Elara Lux headquarters was a cathedral of glass and steel, floor-to-ceiling windows offering a panoramic view of the skyline. The executives were already gathering, their chatter low but curious. Ethan entered with his usual swagger, shaking hands, pretending to know what was going on. But when Sophia walked in, the atmosphere shifted. She wasn't the accessory he usually paraded around. She was composed, dressed in a tailored black suit with understated jewelry, her hair pulled back neatly. Her presence demanded attention, not by force, but by sheer quiet authority. Good morning, she began, taking her seat at the head of the table. Ethan blinked. That was his seat. I think that's... She raised her eyes slightly. It's the co-founder's chair, Ethan. And as the one who called this meeting, I believe it's appropriate. A few glances darted around the room. Someone coughed softly. Ethan's smile faltered, but he sat down beside her. Sophia clicked her tablet, and the large screen at the end of the table lit up. Graphs, numbers, statements. As many of you know, she began, Elara Lux was founded on a partnership of innovation, integrity, and respect. Over time, we've grown, but not all growth is healthy. Her words were precise, professional. The executives listened intently. I've received multiple reports, she continued, about a concerning pattern of internal culture, dismissive comments toward staff, gender bias in leadership communication, and unprofessional remarks made at corporate events. Ethan shifted in his seat. Wait, what reports? We don't have, she raised a hand slightly, graceful but commanding. You'll have your chance to speak. The air thickened. Ethan forced a smile, looking around as if expecting support. But the room had gone still. Sophia clicked again, and the next slide appeared. An image from the luxury dinner the night before, captured by a guest's social post. Ethan laughing at the table, Sophia sitting beside him, expression unreadable. The caption beneath read, CEO Ethan Callaway jokes about his wife's decorating skills. A ripple of discomfort moved through the room. Public perception, Sophia said evenly, is not built on branding alone. It's built on behavior. And the behavior displayed last night was both unprofessional and unacceptable. Ethan's smile evaporated. Are you serious? You're bringing that up here? Soph, it was a joke. You're blowing this out of proportion. Her gaze was unflinching. It wasn't just last night, Ethan. It's been a pattern. And as majority shareholder, 56% to be exact, I have the authority to call for a review of conduct at the executive level. The words hit him like a physical blow. His face drained of color. What did you just say? He whispered. You seem to have forgotten, Ethan, she said softly but clearly. When we incorporated this company, I signed the majority stake. You were traveling during the final filing. I handled the paperwork. The board members looked between them, shocked. Sophia leaned forward slightly. I've tolerated the jokes, the undermining, the dismissiveness, but I will not tolerate a toxic culture at the top of my company. One of the senior executives cleared his throat nervously. Mrs. Callaway, are you proposing? Sophia nodded. Effective immediately, I'm proposing a structural adjustment. Ethan Callaway will step down as CEO and transition into a co-chairman role, focusing on external partnerships. Day-to-day operations will be overseen by an interim CEO until the board finalizes a replacement. Ethan shot up from his seat. You can't do this! Actually, she replied evenly, I can. And I just did, the board members murmured, glancing at each other, no one daring to challenge her authority. Ethan's fists clenched. You'll regret this, Soph. She stood too, her eyes calm. No, Ethan. I regret staying silent for so long. A long pause followed, a strange stillness, as if the air itself had frozen around them. Then, one by one, the board members began to nod, murmuring their agreement. Sophia gathered her files, closed her tablet, and looked at Ethan one last time. The company needed strong leadership again. This isn't personal. It's professional accountability, something you used to believe in. She turned to the others. Thank you all for attending. I'll circulate the official memorandum by noon, and with that, she walked out, heels echoing against the marble floor, every step echoing a chapter closing. Behind her, Ethan sank back into his chair, speechless, his empire, their empire, slipping from his grip. He had humiliated her in public, but she had restored her dignity in the same arena. The power had shifted, not through revenge, but through quiet, calculated justice. The news broke faster than either of them anticipated. By sunrise the next morning, the headlines were everywhere. CEO Ethan Callaway steps down amid internal conflict. Majority shareholder Sophia Callaway takes command of Alara Lux. Power shift at luxury empire. Husband out, wife in. Inside, the silent coup that rocked Alara Lux. The company's PR team tried to control the narrative, releasing a polished statement about a strategic leadership realignment. But social media told a far more scandalous story. Photos from the dinner circulated alongside speculation about what had really happened behind those glass boardroom doors. Ethan's phone was exploding with calls. Reporters, investors, old friends, each one wanting his side of the story. He ignored most of them, pacing their mansion like a trapped animal. His empire, the one he thought he commanded, had shifted beneath his feet, and it terrified him. Meanwhile, across town, Sophia sat in her new office, the same office Ethan once called his throne. She had changed nothing about it except the nameplate on the door. Sophia Calloway, acting CEO, Elara Lux Group. The city skyline gleamed behind her, as if bowing to her new beginning. But even as she sat in quiet power, her chest ached. With a complicated mix of emotions, relief, guilt, and an echo of the love that once bound them. Ethan stormed into her office unannounced. The door slammed open and the staff outside froze. "Congratulations," he said bitterly. "You finally got what you wanted." Sophia looked up from her laptop, calm and unshaken. "What I wanted," she said softly, "was respect." He laughed, harsh and disbelieving. "Respect? You humiliated me in front of everyone. You destroyed my reputation." She rose slowly, every movement deliberate. "I didn't destroy anything, Ethan. You did that yourself. Every time you mocked me, every time you treated me like a prop instead of a partner. You could have talked to me," he shot back. "Privately." "I did," she replied quietly. "You never listened." For the first time, Ethan faltered. His anger cracked, revealing something fragile underneath. "You think I didn't build this too? That I didn't sacrifice?" "I know you did," she said. "But somewhere along the way, you decided you were the only one who mattered." They stood in silence for a moment. Two people who had built an empire from love and ambition, now standing on opposite sides of it. Finally, Ethan's voice softened. "So what now? You kick me out completely?" "No," Sophia said. "You stay, as co-chairman. But you'll learn what it means to work with people again, not above them." His jaw clenched, but he didn't argue. He turned to leave, pausing at the door. "You always were better with words," he muttered. Sophia watched him go, her eyes glimmering, not with victory, but with sorrow. Because for all the power she had reclaimed, she still felt the ghost of what they'd once been. By the following week, the company was buzzing. Staff walked with renewed energy. Sophia's leadership style was different, collaborative, measured, human. She held meetings that actually invited opinions, not performances. For the first time in years, employees felt seen. Investors noticed the change too. The stock, which had dipped after the announcement, began to rebound. Media outlets that once speculated about drama now praised Sophia's composure and vision. Under Sophia Calloway's direction, one article read, "Elara Lux is redefining not just luxury, but leadership." Sophia didn't bask in the praise. She worked quietly and relentlessly, rebuilding trust, repairing cracks Ethan never acknowledged. Still, nights at home were heavy. Ethan had retreated into his own wing of the mansion, avoiding her. She'd, hear him on late-night calls, arguing with journalists or venting to friends. His pride was bleeding, and though she knew he'd brought it on himself, part of her still ached. A week later, at a press event announcing Elara Lux's next major expansion, reporters swarmed the stage. Cameras flashed as Sophia walked up to the podium, poised and radiant. Ethan stood off to the side in his new diminished role. Forced smile, empty applause. A reporter called out, "Mrs. Calloway, what message do you have for women in leadership who face being undermined by their partners or colleagues?" Sophia hesitated for only a moment before answering, her voice steady, rich with truth. "Power," she said, "isn't about volume. It's about value. You don't need to shout to be heard, but you must never allow anyone to silence you." Applause filled the room. Cameras caught Ethan's face, a mixture of admiration and quiet devastation. For the first time, he truly saw her. That evening, after the event, Sophia returned home and found Ethan waiting in the kitchen, a drink untouched on the counter. "I saw your speech," he said softly. "You were incredible." She met his eyes, her expression unreadable. "Thank you." He hesitated, then asked, "Do you hate me?" "No," she said after a long pause, "but I can't keep loving someone who never saw me standing beside him." The words landed like truth, heavy, final, freeing. As she walked away, Ethan looked around at the home they built together, the walls filled with portraits of power and ambition, and realized it had all been built on her quiet strength. For the first time, he understood what his laughter at that dinner had cost him. And for the first time, Sophia understood that reclaiming her dignity didn't mean destroying him. It meant saving herself. Spring arrived with quiet grace, washing the city in light. The glass tower of Alara Lux headquarters reflected a dawn that seemed to belong to a different world. One Sophia had rebuilt piece by piece, like a cathedral after a storm. 3 months had passed since the boardroom upheaval. In that time, the company had transformed, not through drastic rebranding or flashy headlines, but through the calm, consistent rhythm of Sophia's leadership. The office that once echoed with ego and competition now hummed with purpose. Employees who once feared making mistakes now brought forward ideas. Voices once ignored were now shaping decisions. It wasn't just a corporate rebirth, it was a cultural one. Sophia walked through the design floor that morning, pausing to watch a young creative pitch her first concept. The girl was nervous, hands trembling slightly as she spoke, but her eyes were bright with passion. Sophia smiled. "Beautiful work," she said when the presentation ended. "You've captured the heart of the brand perfectly. Authenticity." The girl's shoulders relaxed. "Thank you, Mrs. Calloway. It means everything to hear that from you." Sophia nodded, her expression soft. "Call me Sophia." That small moment reminded her of why she had started all of this in the first place. Not for money, or power, or even prestige. She had built Alara Lux to create something beautiful, something that reflected who she was. Somewhere along the way, that vision had been drowned out by Ethan's charisma and the world's admiration for him. But now she had reclaimed it, her voice, her purpose, her identity. Later that afternoon, she sat in her office reviewing quarterly reports. The numbers were solid, even stronger than before. Investors had regained confidence, and the press now referred to her as the quiet revolution at the top of luxury. The door opened with a soft knock. It was Ethan. He looked different. The arrogance that once radiated from him like perfume had faded. His suit was still immaculate, but there was humility in his posture, a weight of reflection that time had carved into him. "Got a minute?" he asked quietly. Sophia gestured to the chair across from her. "Of course." He sat down, hesitating before speaking. "I came to say thank you." She blinked, caught off guard. "For what?" "For not destroying me," he said, a half-smile flickering across his face. "You could have. God knows you had every reason to. But you didn't." Sophia leaned back, studying him. "That was never my goal, Ethan. I wanted accountability, not revenge." He nodded slowly. "I see that now." For a moment, silence filled the room. Not cold this time, but contemplative. "I've been doing a lot of thinking," Ethan continued. "About us. About how I treated you. I don't even know when I started seeing you as competition instead of a partner." Sophia folded her hands on the desk. "You didn't see me at all. You saw the reflection of yourself you wanted the world to admire. I just stood beside it, quietly holding the mirror." Ethan's eyes dropped to the floor. "You were always the real power, weren't you?" Sophia didn't answer immediately. She glanced toward the window where the sunlight was beginning to fade into amber. "Power isn't what I wanted. I just wanted balance. But when you pushed me aside, I realized something. Balance only exists when both sides respect the weight they carry." He nodded, the truth cutting deep. "You've changed," he said softly. "No," she replied. "I just stopped apologizing for being strong." A faint smile ghosted his lips. I guess I finally get to see the woman the world sees, the one I kept trying to shrink. She met his gaze, not with resentment, but peace. It's not too late to grow, Ethan. Just don't expect the world to wait for you anymore. He stood slowly, his eyes glistening with something unspoken. You'll do great things, Sophia. You already are. As he left the office, Sophia felt a strange calm settle over her. The ache that once twisted inside her chest loosened. She didn't feel vindicated. She felt free. That evening, as the city lights flickered to life, Sophia stood on the balcony of her penthouse, the same one she and Ethan used to share, now entirely her own. Below her, the Alara Lux building shimmered like a beacon. She sipped her tea, her thoughts gentle. Somewhere inside her, forgiveness had begun to bloom, not for him, but for herself. For all the years she'd diminished her brilliance to protect his pride. Her phone buzzed. A message from the board. Congratulations on record-breaking quarterly results. You've made us proud. She smiled faintly, setting the phone aside. For the first time in years, she didn't feel the need to prove anything. Her success wasn't revenge, it was restoration. As the wind brushed her hair, she whispered to herself, almost like a prayer. They laughed at me once. Now, they listen. And far below, the lights of her company glowed. A living reflection of her rebirth, a reminder that real power doesn't roar. It simply stands. The grand ballroom at the Crown Regency gleamed with golden chandeliers and a soft symphony of violins. It was the Alara Lux Annual Gala, the company's most prestigious event of the year, a night where luxury met legacy. Every inch of the room shimmered with quiet opulence, crystal glasses, ivory linens, laughter echoing like music. This time, Sophia wasn't a guest in someone else's spotlight. She was the spotlight. Her arrival silenced the room. Wearing a silver gown that draped like moonlight and diamonds that caught every flicker of light, Sophia moved with effortless grace. Whispers trailed in her wake, admiration, awe, even a touch of disbelief. She's the one who turned the company around. After what Ethan did, she still came back stronger. I heard she holds majority shares now. She practically owns it. Sophia smiled politely as she passed familiar faces, investors, editors, even a few socialites who once ignored her at dinners. There was no bitterness left in her, only a quiet understanding that respect earned through resilience was far more powerful than attention won through arrogance. As the evening progressed, Sophia found herself standing on the same stage where, a year ago, Ethan had humiliated her, mocking her ideas, laughing with executives who had treated her as ornamental. But tonight, the stage was hers. The host handed her the microphone. Please welcome our CEO and lead visionary, Mrs. Sophia Calloway. Applause thundered through the ballroom. For a heartbeat, she closed her eyes, letting the sound wash over her. It wasn't the applause she craved. It was what it symbolized. Acknowledgement. Equality, vindication without vengeance. When she spoke, her voice was calm and resonant, carrying the strength of a woman who had rebuilt her world from fragments. A year ago, I stood on this very stage, not as a leader, but as someone others thought could be silenced. I remember the laughter, the dismissal, the subtle reminders that I was fortunate to be here. But the truth is, I was never here by luck. I was here because I built this. Because every woman who has ever been told to wait her turn, to dim her light, or to smile while being underestimated, deserves her moment to stand tall. The room was silent. Sophia continued, her gaze steady. Tonight isn't about me reclaiming power. It's about redefining what power means. It's grace under humiliation. It's resilience after betrayal. It's the courage to forgive, but never forget who you are. A long pause. Then, applause, louder than before. Genuine. Standing. From the corner of her eye, Sophia caught sight of Ethan. He had been invited, a silent gesture of closure on her part. He stood at the edge of the crowd, clapping slowly, his expression unreadable but sincere. When their eyes met, there was no anger, no regret, only a mutual understanding of what had been lost and what had been learned. He gave a small nod, one that said, "You won." Sophia returned the nod. We both did, in different ways. Later that night, after the gala ended, Sophia stepped out onto the terrace overlooking the city. The skyline glittered like a constellation of dreams, some broken, some reborn. The cool breeze brushed against her skin as she took a deep breath. She thought of the woman she had been, the one who once sat silent beside her husband at corporate dinners, smiling while her ideas were stolen. The one who believed humility meant invisibility. She smiled softly. That woman was gone. Her phone buzzed with a message from her assistant. "Forbes just confirmed. You're on the front page tomorrow." Headline: "The woman who took back her throne." Sophia chuckled lightly. A throne? She didn't see it that way. To her, leadership wasn't about ruling. It was about creating space. As the night deepened, she found herself thinking of her journey. The dinners, the insults, the betrayal, and finally, the rebirth. She realized something profound. She had never needed to prove her worth to anyone. All she'd needed was the courage to act on it. Somewhere in the distance, fireworks began, a part of the gala's closing celebration. The sky bloomed with color, gold and silver cascading above her. Sophia whispered to herself, smiling faintly, "Power doesn't scream. It stands quietly, unshaken." She raised her glass, not to revenge, not even to triumph, but to peace, to the strength it took to walk away with dignity, to the grace it took to rebuild without resentment, and to the quiet truth that had always been hers. She was never beneath him. She was always beyond him. The fireworks faded, but her world didn't need their light anymore. Sophia Calloway, founder, majority owner, survivor, stood beneath the night sky knowing she had reclaimed something far greater than status. She had reclaimed